motherfuckers doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
You got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube, talking all things Week 13 in the NFL. Sam.
Yeah, the season's getting through.
It is
almost done.
It's a weird week in the NFL because what they used to do was post Thanksgiving, the buys were done. They just said no more buys. That's it. From here on out, everybody's playing. But they've changed it up. And I believe this is – actually, no, there's 2 more weeks of buys, but there's 6 teams on bye this week, which means quick, crisp show today, right? We have fewer games to talk about, but there's 6 buys this week. There's 2 more next week, and then we got to really work hard for the last 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, somebody – the Spotify – the Wrapped thing came out yesterday, so people were messaging in, their minutes, what listened to and all that kind of thing. And it had me wondering, how many minutes did we create? Because that wasn't an element anywhere. It was just like, and some people listened to like clearly more minutes than we created, right? Apparently we created 15,000 and something minutes.
There was somebody with 16,000 minutes listened to.
Somebody had 40-something thousand.
It was a 40?
Yes. Wow. And so I was like, I don't understand how that works. And in the Discord, somebody was saying that they use us as like white noise when they go to sleep. They're like, if they're struggling, to get to sleep, they find an old preview show, 2.5 hours worth.
That's
just
where
hit play.
I was always wondering that because when you look at the numbers, most people look at podcast numbers in the first 48 hours or a week or whatever, and we'll see preview shows add thousands of downloads a year later, months later.
Yeah. Eli just posted in the chat somebody with 56,197 minutes.
Wow.
And that only puts them in the top 0.005% of our fans, which means there are higher numbers than that out there.
I think everybody should use this as white noise because it'll be good for the numbers and it'll be good for your Spotify Wrapped next year.
Right. And a lot of numbers. The average time listened will be through the roof. Perfect. Everyone uses this as white noise music, white noise sleep aid.
We're also getting this question again, YouTube chat. Are they, do we like each other?
No.
No, just strictly
business.
On air business partners. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Don't talk outside of the office. Let's just get through the show.
All right, it's painful.
Grind it out.
Right. Imagine, God.
I think you and I I see people split. Mike and Mike split up a couple years ago.
Right.
Are we gonna have like a big bad split at some point?
All right, it depends if the money's right.
Basically, for either one of us. If the right offer comes along, see you later.
Imagine how painful like a 2.5-hour show would be if you absolutely hated the other guy.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
Yeah, like you think if that was your thing, right? I hate the guy across the desk from me. It would be like 30 minutes and I'm done. I'm out. I can't handle any more than that.
I mean, if you had to do shows with other people at PFF, I imagine that'd be difficult. But not me.
Depends on the people.
All right, let's get into the football action. Thursday Night Football, Seattle Seahawks at the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys favored by 9.5. Seattle, we've talked about a little bit on the show about how they're in the middle of this stretch where they're going to be touchdown plus underdogs. Last week was the first game of that stretch. They lost 31-13 to the 49ers. They're at Dallas tonight. They've got San Francisco again next week, and then the Eagles. So the 6-5 Seattle Seahawks, their season on the brink here of falling apart in a challenging little run. And then Dallas, as hot as any team right now, and Dak Prescott in particular, as hot as any quarterback. He is in the middle of a stretch that is really maybe as good as we've ever seen in the PFF era. The last 5 or 6 games, currently the highest graded quarterback by our numbers. And, just since their bye and since getting waxed by San Francisco, he's been unbelievable.
The latest MVP favorite in a season where that seems to change every single week.
Dak's not the favorite.
I think he is now, right?
Oh, no, I think he's only up to 4th or something. It's a weird MVP case again, because they've beat up on bad teams.
Yeah.
And usually that doesn't bode well. I mean, you still earn it by what you do on the field, but Dak having a 92 grade right now. There's two.
Oh, that's right. Jalen Hurts became favorite after
the
winning a game, whereas Dak Prescott is third.
Yes.
After just dominating a game.
But if they beat the Eagles at home, which I think they could do, then that'll flip potentially.
Right.
And then Mahomes also, the Chiefs don't play a good team for the rest of the year, basically, other than maybe the Bills. So they'll probably just end up 14-3, and Mahomes could end up with it again. But Dak Prescott, two ways to look at this. Remember, we said Jared Goff was our highest graded quarterback a couple weeks ago. And on one hand, you give him credit for playing well. On the other hand, it's like, he's never really played at this level, so maybe there's some regression. Would you ever look at Dak through that same lens and say, hey, credit for where you are, but you've never been a 92 graded quarterback? That should come back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing at the kind of level that right now I think is probably unsustainable. I mean, he's got 90-plus grades in, 5 of his last 7 games.
And by the way, just from a game grade perspective, that is very difficult to do, right? There's a difference in a 90 season grade, which might be a whole lot of good that adds up to very good, but 90 game grades are elite, and that is very tough to do as often as he has.
Geno Smith's amazing year last year was built largely off the back of 2 90 grades, right? They are extremely difficult to do. So having 5 of them in an entire season is pretty impressive. Having 5 of them in 7 games is unrealistic as a baseline, and there's no way he sustains that, even if he continues to play teams that they are way better than, which is sort of how the entire Dallas team seems to be built right now, which is just beating up on teams that they are significantly better than. I think fundamentally, the Seahawks game becomes really interesting because they're in the middle, right? They're not the Eagles or the 49ers, which are the teams that Dallas seems to struggle against, those really elite teams, and they're not the teams that they tend to beat up on. They are somewhere in the middle, so it's almost a perfect opportunity for Dallas to actually level set and say, right, what happens when you face a team that isn't elite or a team that you should be beating up on that's actually just somewhere in the middle? A pretty good team, albeit coming off not necessarily their best performance. What does this do to Dallas?
Yeah, I think Seattle's in I think tactically tonight for Seattle, most of the times we don't talk about, hey, lean on the run game. This might have to be the way Seattle does this. Ken Walker's still hurt, but Zach Charbonnet and it looks like Abe Lucas is coming back on the offensive line. Is this actually one of those games where Seattle's got to play old school Pete Carroll football? And if there is a weakness on the Cowboys defense, it's been their run defense for multiple years now. It's certainly not as good as their ability to rush the passer and their ability to have pick sixes, because Deron Bland is a legend. So I think it's one of those games where Seattle's got to shorten it up, run the ball a little bit, and see if they can pull that off. Because Dallas just has this ability, once they know you have to pass, right? Even the Thanksgiving game was close, but it's all right, we got to pick 6. We're gonna lean on you. Seattle's just got to kind of give themselves an opportunity to win in the 4th, which is very old school Pete Carroll football.
Yeah, they're in it's difficult for Seattle to sort of effectively game plan, I think, on offense, because you look at their strengths, and Geno Smith is an incredible deep ball thrower. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, they're built essentially to pass the ball, but the weakness is the offensive line, and particularly when you're going up against Dallas, the Cowboys still have the best pass rush in the NFL. So, your biggest punch is built off going up against their biggest punch, and their biggest punch is probably better and has the capacity to sort of kill yours at source. Whereas the alternative, as you're saying, is instead you sort of lean into the run game and try and do it that way, and it's less likely to sort of knock them over,
I showed a similar stat a couple weeks ago, but along those lines, when you have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and you want to throw to them, well, Dallas's corners, their outside corners, Bland and Gilmore for the most part this year, when they've been targeted, outside corners for Dallas, minus 0.3 EPA per play. We talked about a couple days ago, the Patriots pass offense the last 2 weeks is minus 0.4 EPA per play, right? So very similar range, and it's been a horrendous passing offense for New England the last couple weeks. So that's how good Dallas's outside corners have been when targeted this entire season. Of course, that's skewed by all the pick sixes. That's going to crush your EPA per play. It's just a perspective thing. No other team in the league is even close to negative EPA per play when targeting their outside corners. It's another one of those stats that seems completely unsustainable, but it's one of the stories of Dallas's season in that the third straight year, Dan Quinn and that defense has been unreal at creating turnovers. We know Geno Smith has had some turnover-worthy play issues the last couple of years. So I think that's why Dallas is favored by 9.5. And I think Seattle's only chance is obviously mistake-free football. Take care of the ball. Don't turn it over. But I really think their run game is going to be needed to protect, because their offensive line should not be able to handle Dallas, and I think they need to shorten it up and run it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely possible. One more piece of information for you. Seattle is wearing their throwback uniforms.
Oh, on the road. So this is – so it'll be because Dallas will wear white, of course.
So it's a lot of good juju colliding.
Like Ricky Waters, Seattle Seahawks.
Right,
here.
Ricky Waters, Seattle Seahawks going up against Dallas at home where they dominate everybody.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Dallas averaging over 40 points a game at home. They've overtaken Miami as the highest scoring home team.
The other element, actually, so I think you're probably right, and that's what Seattle will try and do. Having said that, if Dallas does get up and in the scenario where they've been just putting the pedal to the metal and running away from teams, once they get a lead and they can tee off and they really sort of pour gas on the fire, like Seattle's actually an unusual team in terms of potentially being able to claw that back, because like if they're forced into that scenario, you might get a couple of deep balls or big plays to DK Metcalf or whatever. Does that actually claw back the deficit a bit?
Yeah, I think potentially. I think I think there's two ways of looking at it. You're either going to try to shorten the game and play conservative, or you're just going to go all out and say Geno can make big time throws and our receivers can make big time plays, and we've got 3 of them now, and we're going to try to keep up with this Dallas offense. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be close. I think Seattle can also keep it within the 9.5, even though a lot of signs point to Dallas being the better team. I'll give you one more thing to look at here for Prize Picks. Our Prize Picks lineup for Thursday Night Football. We've got Jackson Smith and Jigba going less than 40.5 receiving yards. We have Tony Pollard going more than 61.5 rushing yards, and we have CeeDee Lamb going more than 6.5 receptions. So that's our Prize Picks lineup. We showed this yesterday. If you guys want to play along with us over at Prize Picks, you can do that. So again, Jackson Smith and Jigba less than 40.5 receiving, Pollard more than 61.5 rushing, and CeeDee Lamb more than 6.5 receptions. That's our Prize Picks lineup. You can do the same with basketball season here. You can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made in receptions. You play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community every single week. And Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half, doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, Dallas by 9.5, Sam. It's your turn to pick.
I'm going Dallas. I'm buying into the home, the fact that they annihilate teams, that they're better than. I think they're better than Seattle, and therefore I think that eventually they'll run away with it in the fourth quarter.
Okay, I'm going to say Seattle keeps it close. I like Dallas to win, but I'll say they keep it within the 9.5. By the way, update from last week. You had 9 wins last week, including choosing Linfield over North Reading. So 8 NFL wins you had, 8-8 last week. I was also 8-8 in the NFL. I didn't get the the Linfield game.
No.
And then Harry was 12-4 in his NFL picks last week.
How badly?
And he also got Linfield, so we had 13 total wins.
How badly is your child annihilating us this year?
I still have to add that up,
It's
but it was a
pretty
good week.
bad, though,
It was a good
right?
week for Harry
Yeah.
last week.
I mean, I think he was already ahead, and he just pulled out 4 or 5 extra games on us.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to call him. He's out in like skiing or whatever he's doing out in Colorado before they go to Disneyland or in Utah. So I'm gonna have to go get his picks
Right.
over the phone here.
And then now that you've got plenty of free time, you can actually add up his score.
I'll have time to add it
Yeah.
up. I'll have some updates next week. I'll take Seattle to keep it within the 9.5.
Okay.
All right, Discord game of the week, which is the game of the week. San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. Is that right? Niners are favored?
Yeah.
They're favored by 2.5 at Philly?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Niners are favored by 2.5 at the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles atop everybody's power rankings because they only have one loss. Going up against the Niners, who had that 3-game losing streak but have looked dominant over these last few weeks. I like that. I think we're getting both teams at the peak of their powers, right? I mean, the Eagles are in the middle of this very difficult stretch of games, of which they've won all of them, right? They've just beaten Dallas, Kansas City, and Buffalo. And they still have San Francisco here to go. And then Seattle? Or is there another? Oh, no, then Dallas again and then Seattle. So they're in the middle of this stretch. But the Niners have just dominated these last couple weeks against good teams, against the Jaguars, against the Seahawks. What are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, the Niners, I think, have replaced Cincinnati as the team where I think that their best is better than anybody else's best, right? Like, I think for a while that looked like the Bengals when they, like, for literally a very short while, when they came back and you got like 2 games of Joe Burrow playing like Joe Burrow before he got hurt again. And it's like, when they go up against good teams, they generally beat them. And they beat this 49ers team. But since that point, once the 49ers have gotten all their stars healthy, when Trent Williams is back in the lineup, when Debo is back in the lineup, when McCaffrey's there, when Ayuk is there, the guy you talked about taking the step from good to great, with Brock Purdy playing better than he's played before and actually adding big plays to the offense that itself is a cheat code, I don't think anyone can hang with the 49ers if they play their best football. So they've replaced the Bengals as that team for me. And then Philadelphia is interesting because they're on this run where they keep winning these games, but we're now, 11 games into the season where we haven't hit full throttle yet for the Eagles. And I don't know if we're ever going to hit full throttle for the Eagles or if this Eagles team is just going to be slightly worse than last year, even if the record says they're better or the record ends up the same or whatever. But there's this lingering feeling that they're not where they were, right? It's not quite where it was. And yet maybe the rest of the NFL isn't either, so they keep winning. But I think that's why the 49ers are favorite. Like, they're the team that looks like they're at the level that Philadelphia or Kansas City or even the 49ers were last year before injuries. And the Eagles, the record may be there, but they don't seem like they're playing at that level.
Let me try to back you up a little bit here because we're friends.
Okay.
I'm going to back up your point
Oh,
and
I
try
see.
to help you out. And paint the
That
picture
kind of
here.
backing up.
Well, I'm on Premium Stats 2.0,
Yeah.
all part of your PFF Plus package. And I was looking at the Niners page and I'm looking at the Eagles page. So I'm going to look at overall team grade, and I'll admit our overall team grades for the season they're not like the best proxy for team. I would look at EPA type stuff and other advanced metrics. These are just kind of like rolled up player grades. But if just at a glance, when you're looking at the Niners team page, as a team, their overall grade for games, they have a 92.5 grade against Dallas when they just dominated them, right? A 92 grade against Jacksonville when they dominated them. Bucks, 86. Seahawks last week, 87.5. There's an 87.9 against the Giants. Those are all high 80s, low 90s grades. That shows dominance as a team. So when you go to the Eagles page, Sam, nothing is dominant. It's actually funny. It just paints an interesting picture that's describing what you're saying. It's like the Eagles are absolutely doing just enough to win every single week and in tough games. As I mentioned, Dallas by 5, Chiefs by 4, Bills by 3 in overtime. But their game grades, they've never had a game grade over 81. That was way back in week 2 against the Vikings. Their last few weeks, 77, 70, 73, 73, 75. It's like unbelievably consistent. So again, that just kind of like popped off the page at me as I was looking at it. because I think it backs up what we're seeing. The Eagles they're finding ways to win. Jalen Hurts is on this incredible run, and the Eagles on this incredible run when they're down 10, it doesn't matter. And I think that's the Eagles' superpower, Sam, is they can play the situation. They situational football. They can play from behind if they need to. They can play with a lead. They can scheme it up defensively to shut down offenses like the Chiefs or the Dolphins. They can win in all these different ways, but they're not on a play-for-play basis as dominant as they were last year, for whatever reason. Is it because of a more difficult schedule? Whatever it might be, they hit these weird lulls, I think, on offense, where they just have some nothing plays or nothing drives. But they're certainly capable at any given time with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts still playing very well. Their run game, getting DeAndre Swift getting on the edge with his speed the last few weeks has been a huge catalyst for them getting back on track. So I'm not trying to disparage the Eagles. I'm just trying to describe, I think, their level of play. So they're going up against, like you said, a team that dominates games in the Niners.
I think a huge part of this is, part of it I think is Jalen Hurts' injury. He's dealing with a knee injury. He's not 100%. I'm sure that's affecting his play at times, if not all the time, and that's part of why they're not quite firing on all cylinders. I think part of it is also this general league-wide trend of defenses winning, right? For the first time in years, defense is actually having more success against offenses generally. Now, the Eagles counter that to a degree by the push play being unstoppable, right? So even when defenses are winning, they still have this extra cheat code of being able to extend drives anytime they get to, third or fourth and short and keep things going. So it's sort of this weird dynamic that not a lot of other teams can bring to the table. But I think that's probably part of why this doesn't look quite as good as it did a year ago. By contrast, the 49ers are one of 2 or 3 teams in the NFL that simply aren't really being affected by this league-wide trend of defense winning. Like, they are still, Brock Purdy is averaging 9.4 yards per attempt. Like, that's the one offense where defense is not winning. Defense may be fighting back, but the 49ers don't care. They're still ahead. So I think, honestly, what we might be seeing is the Eagles are simply in the same bucket as everybody else, which is a percentage has been taken off the top of this offense, and the 49ers aren't.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it such a great matchup. Of course, it's a rematch of the NFC Championship last year, which was not a good football game, Sam.
No.
Brock Purdy hurt almost immediately. Josh
Turns
Johnson
out quarterbacks are quite important.
What is?
Turns out quarterbacks are quite important.
Yeah. So I can't remember. I honestly tuned out in the second half. Christian McCaffrey was just taking direct snaps or something.
Yeah. He was basically playing quarterback-ish.
It was horrendous.
They literally did the thing. They answered the question that I'm always asking, what happens if the emergency QB comes in? Turns out it's a disaster. It's terrible. Even when the emergency QB is a guy as versatile as Christian McCaffrey, it's still non-functional in any way, shape, or form. It's worse than the Kendall Hinton offense, which is, a guy that theoretically could play quarterback, and no, it's just not, doesn't work.
Yeah. So it was ugly last year. I think playing in Philly is a huge factor here. If you look at Brock Purdy's splits or the Niners home road splits, those are a factor. Again, there's a lot of teams that are far better at home than they are on the road. Dallas being one of those statistically, but San Francisco has elements of that as well. But Niners being favored against an Eagle. So how much do you think the emotional aspect of this for the Eagles playing these tough games? They went from beating Dallas at the last second.
You can only go to the well so many times, right?
To Monday Night Football against the Chiefs, where they had to make a 10-point comeback, to last Sunday going to overtime against the Bills, another 10-point comeback. We mentioned the guy like Jordan Davis playing 64 snaps or whatever it was, a career high by about 15 snaps. How much can they handle this against a great team?
Meanwhile, since going on that 3-win or 3-loss skid, the 49ers have won comfortably for 3 straight weeks and have emotional baggage attached to this game of, they want revenge for the NFC Championship game. Now, look,
Didn't Debo Samuel, he called James Bradbury trash or something like that?
Oh, Debo's been sounding off since that game that, all about the 49ers constantly. A.J. Brown set Eagles Nation onto trolling Debo Samuel this week. Said, go nuts. You have my blessing. Go and antagonize him. So, yeah, it's a charged game. So here's a data point that I think illustrates interestingly sort of where these two offenses are. Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts have very, very close PFF grades now. Purdy's actually risen to meet Jalen Hurts in terms of overall performance, 81.8 versus 83.0. Passer rating under pressure is very, very similar as well, 82.7 versus 86.4. Essentially, when the play breaks down, they're doing very similar work, right? When it's ad-libbed, when it's on them as opposed to the offense, it's actually similar. Big time throw rate is basically identical. Purdy's is actually higher. Where they massively diverge, though, passer rating when kept clean, when everything's good, when everything's in rhythm, when it's just the offense. Brock Purdy's passer rating when kept clean is 127.3.
I was going to say 140 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is quote unquote just a 98.9, right? So there's 30 points of passer rating is being added to this 49ers offense when things go well that aren't there for the Eagles. And it's not there because the quarterback is playing worse, because they're, broadly speaking, playing the same. It's there because that 49ers offense, whether it's the skill position players, whether it's Shanahan, whether it's the combination of all of them together, it's just working at a level that the Eagles offense isn't.
Is this the game? We talked yesterday, we had a great question about the team building strategy of the Niners, and basically they don't have a good pass blocking grade. I mean, they have a 51.8 pass blocking grade as a team for a very effective offense that you've just described. And we said, it's the scheme protects those offensive linemen. They can overcome the pass blocking. Brock Purdy is actually excellent at handling pressure and maneuvering the pocket, a step up from what Jimmy Garoppolo was. Or is this the game where the Eagles, and they're always a top 5 pass rushing team. They are again this year, 81 pass rush grade as a team. They're not as good as they were last year, but again, Hassan Reddick going up against Colton McKivitz, Jalen Carter on the interior. We know that they have enough pass rushers. Is this actually the game that exploits this weakness for the 49ers? Could be.
Maybe. Having said that, the Eagles' pass rush is not what it's been for the previous seasons.
No, it's fifth instead of first or second.
Right. That's another element that's down a little bit versus previous years. Now, Hassan Reddick specifically is an interesting
that matchup.
Potential matchup winner. Reddick should spend basically no time whatsoever over Trent Williams. This is another one of those matchups where I don't understand why you would put him there ever. If he goes up against Colton McKivitz every single play, remember, Reddick is the guy that hurt Brock Purdy last time. Now, there's no point in spending any time into what that play call was, what the blocking assignment was, et cetera, but Reddick versus McKivitz is a big matchup in Philadelphia's favor that could scupper that offense to a degree.
I've got one more matchup to watch, then we'll make our picks.
Uh-huh.
The Eagles' run defense. Number 1 run defense grade in the NFL. They were outstanding last week. Remember on the review show I mentioned the Bills had one good drive basically running the football other than Josh Allen. One good drive. Now that drive did coincide with Zach Cunningham being injured and off the field. He's questionable with a hamstring injury. Not expecting him to play necessarily. But Jordan Davis was very good up front. Jalen Carter was very good up front. Their run defense against the Niners, who always can run the ball effectively enough, especially with McCaffrey. The Eagles have a couple advantages on the defensive side of the ball. Run defense, the ability to rush the passer that can maybe give this Niners offense some problems here. So keep an eye on that matchup as well. All right, man. Niners favored by 2.5 on the road here. Where are you going?
I'm buying San Francisco. I think
really
they are better.
They're better than the Eagles.
Yeah,
when
everybody's healthy, I think they're better, and everybody's healthy right now.
I think the home field advantage is a factor. Can we get a weather update? Let's check Philly weather.
55 and overcast.
It's not. basically nothing.
No.
It's always overcast. It's always sunny in Philly. I'm taking the Eagles. I'm taking the Eagles as home underdogs. I think they can go back. I think the Eagles, I'm on record saying I think Dallas will get them at home. I think the Eagles' next loss comes to the Cowboys next week, not this week. Home underdog, I'm taking the Eagles. All right, great game. That'll be fun. As a parent, you've had to learn so many new skills to provide for your family, how to do copious amounts of laundry, meal plan for even the pickiest eater, and now how to protect your family's financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life provides an easy one-stop shop for your family's financial needs, offering high-quality term life insurance policies plus other financial solutions in one easy online hub. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage in less than $1 a day, for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Policy is issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Reading is a challenge for me today. All right, not too many games to get through here, Sam. We'll do it. We'll do a great job. To the 1 o'clocks, Detroit Lions at the New Orleans Saints. Lions coming off their difficult loss on Thanksgiving, because that's what they've been doing in recent years. And the Saints also coming off of some of their own disappointments. Lions still 8-3 in charge in the NFC North. The Saints at 5-6, technically behind the Falcons in the NFC South, but they both have the same record, 5-6. Saints are the only team in the NFC South with a positive point differential at +7. So, what's the line here? Sorry, I clicked off of it.
Saints +4.
Yeah, Lions are favored by 4 here in the Dome. What are you looking for here?
Yeah, it's another. The Lions have had these weird games now where, generally speaking this season, everything's going well, right? They're 8-3. They have the division in hand. They're probably not in contention for that number 1 seed because of where Philadelphia is, but like they're in a great spot and in great shape. But their losses have been concerning, each one of them, and they've been sort of spread out, right? Like they lose early in the season to Seattle, and then everything either side of that is good, right? They obviously get the opening night win against Kansas City, albeit a depleted Kansas City team, but then handily beat Atlanta, handle Green Bay, obviously beat Carolina, Tampa Bay, and then boom, a loss where they get annihilated on both sides of the ball by Baltimore. You're like, ooh, that was weird. And then you get a win against the Raiders, a win against the Chargers, a win against the Bears, and then this ridiculous loss against Green Bay on Thanksgiving where, again, nothing was working for the Lions on either side of the ball, completely out of character. And unlike Baltimore, they're not a team that should be doing that to you. Like the Ravens, you can go, okay, maybe they're the best team in the AFC and therefore the NFL. We can kind of chalk that up to just a really good team showing up at the right time. Green Bay is not that. Like that game on Thanksgiving should not have happened to the Lions. So do they bounce back again the way they bounced back the previous 2 times, and they're going to go on a run again, beat the Saints, beat the Bears, beat the Broncos, beat the Vikings, put themselves right at the top of the NFC? Or have these games that keep coming along every few weeks highlighted the sort of fragility of this Lions, season this year?
Yeah, they're tough to predict. They're easier to predict than the Saints, though. The Saints have, they have all the metrics. Like when I was looking at the Cowboys and their all of the outstanding metrics I was looking for the Cowboys, like how good are their corners when you target them, and all these great numbers. Like the Saints are right behind the Cowboys. The Saints can play that shutdown level defense, and then when you look at the offensive personnel, all year I've been saying, look at all these playmakers. Of course, Derek Carr can get the ball to them. They're just one of the most horrendous red zone teams I've ever seen in my life. The Saints. I mean, that's really the difference. Between the 20s, they're good, and once they get to the 20, they're horrendous, and they find ways. And I think last year was a similar issue with the Saints with Andy Dalton. It's been an issue with Derek Carr across, whether it was with the Raiders or with the Saints. But yeah, you're right. Like predicting the Lions kind of laying an egg every few weeks, it's difficult to do because just a few weeks ago, their game against, I don't want to say it was a perfect game. It was a perfect game offensively against the Chargers. They were rough defensively. I think what's catching up to the Lions, though, is their pass rush being
the defense generally. I mean, they're banged up in the secondary. They haven't found that extra complementary piece, pass rushing to Aiden Hutchinson. And yes, that's the one trend now for a month plus that's been consistent is the defense has not been riding at the same level it was earlier in the year. They can be attacked.
And I don't think that was a team-building failure. I think, James Houston remember he had that incredible run last year on about 100 snaps. It was like, okay, this guy will be a great situational rusher. He's only played 31 snaps this year. He's been hurt.
Yeah.
Charles Harris
had a lot of injuries.
Yeah. Charles Harris was coming off a career year. They had the Okwaras there. They had solid options opposite Aiden Hutchinson. But I do think if you're a Lions fan, the only thing you're going to look at in hindsight is say, okay, at the trade deadline, when the 49ers, when Chase Young is like the 5th best pass rusher on the 49ers and he'd be number 2 for the Lions, you're going to look back and say, should we have tried to add somebody? So that is the thing. And even way back week 1 against Kansas City, Aiden Hutchinson had 8 or 9 pressures, but they couldn't sack Mahomes because most people can't anyway. But it was just one. There's a lot of plays where it's just one isolated pressure. And you can avoid one guy. Yeah. And you need those plays where you're collapsing the pocket and pressing the quarterback. And the Lions just don't have that right now. Some games, but I think that's what's catching up and starting to bite just a little bit on that side of the ball.
Yeah, losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was a big loss to that secondary.
For sure.
Like they've had injuries in the secondary as well. I think just generally across the board, this defense is now becoming a concern for Detroit. It can be exploited. It can be attacked. It's not the strength it was earlier in the season. They were defending the run spectacularly well early in the year. That's not the case anymore. And they don't affect the pass well enough because they've lost players on both ends, the pass rush up front and the back end, the secondary. So I think that's becoming a weakness. And if that's the case, you need the offense to sort of have its best games, right, and step up and pick up the slack from the fact that the defense is now a potential weakness or can be exploited. And in fact, the opposite is happening. Like the offense is having these stuttering games in critical moments sometimes.
The one other thing I want to highlight here is 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think just 2 weeks ago, Jared Goff had the highest PFF grade. He is now down to number 12.
Back-to-back, his worst games of the season.
Yeah, and again, it's just, I think it was the nature of the grading right now, where there was a whole bunch of players, there's really a bunch of players clustered together in how well they're playing. And while guys like Dak Prescott continue to play elite football and guys like Josh Allen are still playing solid and Lamar and Trevor Lawrence, Goff had those 2 bad games.
He's dropped almost 10 grading points in 2 weeks.
Yes. Because they were bad the last couple weeks.
Yeah, because he's back
7 turnover-worthy plays, 6 turnover-worthy plays over the last 2 weeks.
And back-to-back games that were in and around 50 as a grade.
So half of Goff's turnover-worthy plays have come over the last 2 weeks. The question for me is, I've said before, is this a slump? Is he not seeing it? It did look like 2 weeks ago against the Bears, he wasn't seeing it, just wasn't seeing the field, putting the ball in harm's way in a different way than he had been for the rest of the year. Green Bay kept putting the ball on the turf. Is this a sustained slump? Some people were questioning if he had a little hand injury or maybe the little hands. They were struggling holding on to the ball. So some question marks there as far as Goff in this offense. I still think they're very capable, and me trying to predict what the Saints are going to do, when on paper so many of the pieces are good, they just hit this lull in the red zone, man. So all that said, where are you going this one?
They have bounced back very well, which from every one of these setbacks, which is the only thing that makes me really buy into the idea of the Lions. That being said, I think the Saints can have joy against that defense. Man, I don't know. I'm torn on this one. Let's go New Orleans.
I'm back and forth on it too. New Orleans as home underdogs. I don't want to bet on the Saints. Remember, every year we say this, right? This has been the remember the Jags a couple years ago. I'm like, I don't want to predict what you're going to do.
Yeah.
The Saints are that team this year. I will never be surprised by what the Saints do. If they're disappointing or if they look like an elite team. I do think at the end of the day, they should still win the NFC South. With all their issues, they should still win the NFC South for whatever that's worth. I'll take the Lions, though. As you mentioned, they are able to bounce back, and I think at the end of the day, the situational football will be in their favor over the Saints. Miami Dolphins at the Washington Commanders. Dolphins favored by 9.5 here at Washington. Jack Del Rio, defensive coordinator, has been fired since Thanksgiving, so we might get the DC bump here, new DC bump for Washington. Yes, in DC. Dolphins, they get to play a road game against a lesser opponent, right? A lot of their home road splits are they beat the Jets on the road last week, but they get to go to Washington as 9.5-point favorites here. What are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what that change in coaching does for the defense, because for a couple of years now, Washington's defense has felt like it should be better, and it's been underachieving, and they've tended to come where they've had runs where they start slow and they get better, or it changes over a period of time. Like, I wonder now if we just remove the coach and start consistently getting the level of performance from some of these players that we should be getting or have come to expect, whether this defense has the capacity to get significantly better. Now, this is a really rough test, like a baptism of fire to test that theory of, hey, it's great that you're moving in the right direction. Now go and stop the Miami offense. Good luck. That's tough, particularly when, even if you just look on a season level, like 2 of their top 3 pass rushers no longer play on the team, right? The edge rushers have been shipped off.
They traded Chase Young and Montez Sweat during the season. Jonathan
Allen is their primary source of pass rush as an interior player, and he's still playing really well, but not at that, Aaron Donald level where he's single-handedly able to generate all the pressure the team needs. They don't really have the edge rushers yet. Daron Payne doesn't bring that kind of pass rushing presence. He's just not that type of player. So this front four that for years has been the strength of the team and should be one of the best in the NFL, it probably isn't anymore. Like, they've shipped off half the players that would be applicable to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Washington's just in transition, and if you look at, they're tied with the Giants now, record-wise, at 4-8. Point differential is actually similar to the Giants. As icky as the Giants' season feels, Tommy's saved it. He's on bye. He's just resting this week. But minus 133 point differential for the Giants. The Commanders are at minus 104. It's not been a good season, even though they played the Eagles tough a couple times. And we usually spend most of our Washington time talking about Sam Howell. He's remained inconsistent here. When it looked like he was maybe turning a corner, that regressed a little bit. It's a fascinating season for Howell. He's dropped back almost 100 times more than any other quarterback. I know they haven't had a bye. That's going to skew those numbers. But it's also been this extremely pass-heavy attack. There's been a lot of pressure on him, both literally and figuratively. So he's faced the fire this year, Howell. And, it's been a challenging year for a first-year quarterback. So they're in transition, man. And I think for the Dolphins, it's one of those got to take care of business games because they're 8-3. They're still in the mix for they're a game and a half ahead of the Bills in the division, or 2.5 games ahead of the Bills in the division, looking for a number 1 seed, looking for, seeding 2 or 3 seed above the Ravens, Jags, and Chiefs, and the Dolphins have to take care of business here.
Yeah, it's difficult to know what the Vic Fangio type of defense will do to Sam Howell. There's not a pattern in his performances in terms of scheme. Like, he's not struggling against one specific scheme. He's struggled against the Bills, who run a sort of coverage-based defense. He's also struggled against the Giants, who are the second most blitz-happy team in the NFL, and against Dallas, who just, bring pressure everywhere. So I don't know that there's necessarily a trend as to whether he's going to do well or badly against a Fangio type of defense. But because the Dolphins' offense is likely to have a lot of success, it's going to have to be a game where they turn it over to Howell again and say, keep pace, which is, if nothing else, a wildly high variance end of how this can go. Sam Howell's played some of his best football where they've abandoned the run hurry up, and just said, deal, and see what happens. He's also played some of his worst football in those situations as well. Right. So Like, who the hell knows how this is going to go?
We don't know. So I think the Dolphins are going to have their way offensively. I don't think without Jack Del Rio, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're not going to be able to hang with this Dolphins passing
I think it
attack.
should help. Like, I do think that Del Rio's defense was becoming a problem. So shifting scheme or shifting coaching, I think, should help them. I just don't know if it's going to be this week.
So predicting the 9.5 again. I don't. In any given week, Howell can get rid of the ball quickly and make big time throws and make plays with his legs and let them hang. I think I might lean as 9.5 point underdogs that Washington can cover, but I got Miami definitely have the Dolphins winning this game. So where are you going to go on this one? 9.5 points, Dolphins favored.
That's a lot of points. Yeah, I'll say Washington cover that.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same. I don't love it. I don't love it whatsoever. But I'll go with them. Sam Howell bouncing back and making some big plays to at least keep it close. All right, let's go AFC South matchup. Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. You know where I'm going with this one, Sam. Titans are in Nashville. 4-0 in Nashville. And 0-7 in all other cities in the world.
And yet they're a home underdog.
Home underdog. People are not considering this.
No.
Colts favored by 1 here going into Tennessee. Colts are a playoff team. Playoff caliber team here as far as record goes. 6-5. They're tied with the Texans for second in the AFC South.
Yeah, and they're in the playoffs as things currently stand, right? They are sitting in the wild card spot.
They are. Surprising.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew's Indianapolis Colts, currently the 7 seed, tied at 6-5 with the Texans and the Broncos, but owning the tiebreaker.
Hipster Baker Mayfield. Gardner Minshew.
In a year where the Bills and the Bengals are on the outside looking in the playoff picture. Unexpected coming into the year here.
Yeah. Indianapolis, one of the things they've had working for them has been that defensive line, which has caused all kinds of problems for teams in the last few weeks. And sometimes from unexpected sources, like Samson Ebukam was crushing it last week. It was a big part of them winning the game.
He has a career high PFF grade this year.
Yeah, he's been playing well, but he's not the kind of player that you expect to be like taking over games and determining the outcome.
No, for sure.
And then every week you look at Tennessee, and they're one of those teams where your starting point, at least for me, tends to be who are we going up against, because this offensive line is bad. And if we face a team that's good enough to exploit that, it's going to be tough sledding.
Yeah, it is. And I think, Will Levis has been a little inconsistent as a rookie because he is a rookie. When he's been at his best, it's when they can run play action and get the ball down the field. And I think they're still capable of that with DeAndre Hopkins. Chris Moore. Have I done my little Chris Moore rant yet?
I don't think so.
I've been waiting for this one for the last couple weeks.
Okay.
The guy doesn't. There's no sense made in Chris Moore. He has become receiver for the Titans, by the way.
Yes.
He has become one of the most unexpected deep threats in the NFL that you would just out of nowhere. He's averaging. I don't have the right number here, but he's averaging over 23 yards per reception. It was at 26 going into last week, and he caught a couple passes for 40 yards. He's become a designated deep threat. He's become the Khalif Raymond guy that we always talk about, which is fine, other than the fact that he's been in the league for about 7 years. He's never done it before. He's never been a deep threat, and he ran a 4.53.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing about Chris Moore that says, oh, yeah, he's a definite 24, 25 yards per reception guy. And the Titans are getting him the ball on end arounds. They're getting him the ball in space. They're throwing the ball to him downfield. It's just a fascinating development for a guy that came into the league in 2016 as a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, his college numbers were very, designated deep thready, though. Like his average catch in his entire college career was like 19, and it was above 20 in 3 of the 4 years. So he sort of has that. But you're right, like 6'1", 200 pounds that runs a 4.5. This is not a guy you expect to have any kind of he's gonna be the new Will Fuller, but apparently he is.
It makes look at the rest of his NFL career. He never caught more than, he had 48 catches last year for Houston at 11.4 per catch. He had 13.8 yards per catch back in 2017 on 18 catches for the Ravens. There's no point in his career where he did anything like what he's doing right now. And it's just 12 catches for 280. It's just fascinating. And it's like the Titans are going out of their way. Like, we got to get our Chris Moore deep shots in there.
His average depth of target is 20 yards downfield.
Right. It's never done anything like that. Last year it was 9.
Yeah.
I mean, good for the Titans. It's not, and again, it's not like he's going to the Pro Bowl or anything like that, but I love having one of these guys on the team.
And they needed one, right? Because they
Yes.
bring in DeAndre Hopkins, and like my analysis on Hopkins before he had moved anywhere was, can he still play? He can do everything except this, right? At this point in his career, Hopkins can still win at all levels except consistently taking the top off of defense or running pass coverage. Now, he's had some, deep receptions this year for the Titans, but they've not been like beating a guy one-on-one unless he's given the opportunity to grab the corner and throw him off the field, right? Like A.J. Terrell. He can win that way, but what he can't do is just run past A.J. Terrell and get, 2 yards of separation anymore. So that's the element that was missing to this offense. And if they found it in Chris Moore, good for them.
Now, so this is where, again, we've been intrigued by Will Levis throwing the ball down the field. Hasn't been nearly as good as it was his first, in his debut. But if you can get a couple plays for designated deep threat Chris Moore, get the ball down the field to DeAndre Hopkins, I think Tennessee has a chance. Of course, you've got Derrick Henry. Henry is running unbelievably behind a not-so-good offensive line. So you mentioned the line. The Titans historically have been a good run-blocking offensive line, bad pass blocking. This year it's not good either way. But Henry over 90 PFF grade because he's just making a lot happen on his own. So they have these pieces where they can create offense. My concern still is up front, as you're saying. Jalen Duncan, rookie left tackle last week, 47 pass blocking grade. He did not look good at Maryland last year when he had to go up against Penn State or Ohio State. He was getting absolutely crushed. I have concerns against him going up against the great Samson Ebukam and the Colts rushers. So I think it's a challenge blocking up front, whereas the Colts on the other side, quietly really good in the trenches, both sides of the ball. As long as Minshew's taking care of the ball, I think they'll have some opportunities here to move the ball.
The Titans they have one of my favorite sort of grading quirks in PFF Premium Stats 2.0. They are top 3 graded receivers in terms of receiving grade. Jeffrey Simmons, DeAndre Hopkins, and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, it's perfect. You got to feature your best players, right, no matter which side of the ball they're on. So the Jeffrey Simmons package is outstanding. I think Tennessee scored 17 last week to get the win against Carolina at home. This will be the first time I think I'm going to pick against Tennessee.
Oh, you're going against the home? All
my analysis says. Now listen, I'll let the viewers and you guys maybe help decide. All my analysis says Colts, but Tennessee's at home.
Yeah.
And that analysis says they're undefeated in Nashville and they're home dogs.
Yeah.
All right.
I can't believe you're going against that.
You're right. Roll with Nashville. Roll with Nashville. I'll take the Titans to cover against the Colts. All right, let's go. Here we go. Los Angeles Chargers at the New England Patriots. Chargers favored by 5.5 in New England, and it's looking like Bailey Zappi is going to be getting the start for the New England Patriots. Reports out of New England yesterday that Mac Jones took 0 snaps at practice. Bailey Zappi took starter snaps, with Malik Cunningham taking backup snaps, the rookie quarterback out of Louisville. So it might be Zappi time here.
Great. Everybody's excited by that.
Now, if Zappi was going up against Josh Allen, I would say that's one of the bigger discrepancies in arm talent and QB skill set that you would see. But it's still pretty close with Zappi and Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Just an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's a move they have to make, right? Like Mac Jones, I mean, God, he has to be sat down, whether it's for him, whether it's for everybody else's sake. They have to sit him down. The problem is we've seen, I think, a few times now that the chances are Bailey Zappi's not going to be much better.
Now, I think Bailey Zappi's 2-0 as a starter.
Yeah.
So he's been a relief pitcher 4 times this year. He's coming in relief. But last year as a starter, 2-0 against the Browns and the Lions last year. So maybe as a starter, Zappi, build the game plan around him.
Yeah, you think that's what it is?
I mean, he was hyped up for like 4 throws last year because every time he ran play action, the defense fell over. And guys were left wide open. It didn't make a ton of sense. And then
there was like a brief period of time where
back.
people were saying, like, genuinely, is there a QB controversy based off the 2 starts that he had? And then it's like, no, of course there isn't. Like, he's not good.
He had 2 starts. Mac Jones came back, and then on Monday Night Football, Zappe replaced Mac Jones. He runs play action. The defense completely bites on it. There's a guy wide open. He has like a 40-yard touchdown on his first pass. That was the loudest Gillette Stadium had been since, like, the good days in New England. But since that point, he's been not so good. Zappe doesn't have a great arm, but New England, they're like breaking records for various futility stats.
Yeah.
Like losing games when they only allow 10 points 2 straight times. They're running the ball extremely well, but still not putting points on the board. It's just a matter of, can they put a couple drives together and improve this offense? I think Zappe's at least capable of that, but he's had some horrendous INTs in there too, just like Mac Jones has.
Yes. I mean, yeah. Ultimately, I don't think that that's going to work. I mean, I think Bailey Zappe is probably going to end up having a similar kind of performance to Mac Jones, albeit, it'll look slightly differently, and it maybe won't be as overtly depressing as the Mac Jones collapse. I just don't think, they're not. It's not the spark that's going to turn this offense into something good. They're going to run the ball like crazy and hope that they can do that enough that Bailey Zappe doesn't have the chance to throw the game away for them. And to be fair, they've got a shot at that, in this particular game.
Oh, I think they'll be able to run against the Chargers. It's just a matter of not putting that disastrous interception together. Chargers are 4-7, man.
Yeah.
4-7. And while their season feels like a disaster, again, they still have good players. They still have games where, Khalil Mack looks great and Justin Herbert has these outstanding games and Keenan Allen is fun, and Herbert's the number 9 graded QB. And I think the Chargers aren't going to end the season with 4 wins. But remember a couple of years ago when Deshaun Watson had a really good season and they only had 4 wins in Houston. The Chargers are dangerously close to one of those types of seasons where your quarterback's good overall and you still find a way with a top 10 quarterback to lose a lot of games.
And this is not the Chargers defense of the last couple of years where you would say, okay, simply doing nothing but running Ramondre Stevenson and Zeke Elliott will get you, 5.5 yards per carry, and you can win the game without ever putting it in Mac Jones or Bailey Zappe's hands. This year, the Chargers defense is only giving up 4.2 yards per carry, which is basically league average. So they've gone from by far the worst run defense in the NFL to a run defense that is simply average. But I think you're right. Like that has to be New England's game plan. Try and establish the run as much as humanly possible. Don't put it in Bailey Zappe's hands unless we have to, and hope that we can get enough joy out of that works.
So get ready for the next few months. Bill Belichick is going to be rumored to be the next coach for every team that needs a coach, including potentially the Chargers. So, is Bill Belichick getting a close-up view of his future team here, Sam?
I don't. No.
Would Bill Belichick go to the Chargers with Justin Herbert there, and there's this foundation of players to build around in his old age?
Don't think so.
Okay.
I think of all the teams that are going to be interested in Belichick, the Chargers doesn't feel like one that Belichick would be interested in.
Out to L.A., not an L.A. guy?
Not so much that, just in terms of situation. Like, I think there are going to be teams that make more sense for him to go where you can have maybe full control, even if not full control. It's a situation that has demonstrated more competence, overall, that he'll be better in. Like, I don't see the Chargers as a particularly good fit.
All right, man. Chargers favored by 5.5 here in New England. 1:00 start. Where are you going with this one?
The Patriots to keep it closer than 5.5.
Patriots to keep it closer than 5.5. So the Zappe bump. Zappe bump? That's what you're expecting? Or
No, I just think they'll be able to keep it closer than that. I think they might be able to run the ball enough and have Zappe throw enough screens that they can just keep. Plus, it's the Chargers, right? They find some way of not winning by 12 or whatever.
I'll take the Chargers. Again, I could easily paint this picture where New England, gets a little spark and they run the ball and play solid defense, and the Chargers charger. But I gotta say, the Chargers have a better squad all the way across.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely do. I just think that they'll find a way of not exploiting that to its fullest.
All right, let's go Carolina Panthers at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Bucks favored by 5.5 here at home. Panthers have just one win, but they just fired Frank Reich. So another.
And others.
And others, yes. QB coach Josh McCown, Deuce Staley, running back coach. So, new coach bump here.
Yeah, I might be most fascinated about that element of it.
Chris Tabor is the new, the interim head coach.
Right.
He was the special teams coach.
Mm-hmm. And a holdover. So Frank Reich put together this quite eclectic coaching staff that was like a mix of, seasoned old veterans, like tons of experience, and guys that were like in the league last week, right? Like Josh McCown, right? So they had this weird mix, but there were also, I think, 2 coaches from the previous regime that David Tepper wanted to keep around. One of which was this guy, the special teams coach, who stayed from the previous coaching regime. So they had like 3 different types of coaches in this staff. There was the old grizzled veterans, the brand new coaches, and a couple of guys that were in the last coaching staff that Tepper wanted to keep around. And that's the guy running the show right now with the consultation of Jim Caldwell as just a voice.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Then this guy comes in and is like, I tell you what, I appreciate that you've gotten rid of Frank. That clearly needed to happen. I also appreciate that I'm now in charge, and the first thing I want to do is get rid of Deuce Staley and Josh McCown.
What was happening? Like, was he just, these guys should never be coaching?
I
can't stand working with them. What was happening?
I have no idea. I just think that that's an incredibly interesting element of this whole thing, is that an interim guy who typically I don't know that they even have hiring and firing privileges normally, but this combination of the special teams coach and Jim Caldwell have come in and said, we didn't go far enough getting rid of Frank. I need Deuce and Josh out of the building.
Now, Jim Caldwell, he was the guy that came in like week 11 or 12, right, for the Ravens on their Super Bowl run. He came in, took over, I forget, tip of my tongue.
Having been the sort of guy that everyone points at for the Lions of like, hey, remember when you thought Jim Caldwell needed to be fired despite like winning games and doing quite a good job, and then everything since that had been terrible until the Dan Campbell period.
Yeah, Jim Caldwell's had an interesting career because he won in Indianapolis with Peyton Manning, and a lot of people said, well, it's because
and got no credit for that because it was Tony Dungy having left and then Peyton Manning there. So it's like, well, none of this is Jim. And then he does a good job in Detroit. It's like, well, not good enough.
And in between there, he was the guy. Remember, the Ravens offense and Joe Flacco didn't look good in 2012. They looked horrendous. And then they ended up going to win the Super Bowl, but it was after they appointed Jim Caldwell coordinator around this time of the season. It was like around Thanksgiving, and Caldwell was a catalyst there. So it's an interesting – I wonder if he'll be in the mix as far as the head coaching job goes going forward because, yeah, he got fired from Detroit for just not being able to get them – over the hump, but he got them to the playoffs, right? Again, against expectations, Jim Caldwell has done a great job throughout his career. So, the same way Jim Caldwell went in and helped Joe Flacco in 2012, is there a world where we're going to start seeing signs of life here for Bryce Young down the stretch for the Panthers?
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can look for, right, is everything about this Panthers offense has been awful so far. Is there any change whatsoever getting rid of Frank Reich? Or did we just not even rearrange the deck chairs in the Titanic? Did we just change nothing for the sake of changing?
And as bad as Carolina has been this season, the Bucs are 2-7 since starting 2-0. And again, even those games where they won early in the season, you kind of snuck past the Vikings in week 1, beat the Bears. The Bucs have they've been competitive in pretty much every single game, but they're not finishing games. They've had opportunities to make comebacks against the Colts, blew a game against the Texans, wherever your perspective is, had a chance to come back against the Bills, kind of made that close. Comeback opportunity against the Falcons. They've been pretty close in a lot of games, but they're sitting here at 4-7. But just like every other team in the NFC South, like the Bucs still legitimately have a chance to win the division because they do play the Panthers twice, and they have the 2 teams that are ahead of them, the Falcons and the Saints, still have those 2 teams on the schedule. Can the Bucs actually make a run here, even though they're 2-7 in their last 9 games?
Yeah, I mean, if they can't beat the Panthers, what are they even doing? Like, everything has been terrible for the Panthers this season. Sure, they just fired a coach, but like it's still all bad. I mean, the offensive line is still miserable. The coach, has no real experience of doing anything at this level.
Talking about the Bucs?
No, the Panthers.
Oh, the Panthers. I was gonna say, yeah.
Like, sure, they might have a new bump by getting rid of Frank Reich, but it doesn't change any of the underlying problems. So this should be Tampa Bay's comfortably.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. The Bucs pass rush has been kind of hit or miss this year, but seeing rookie Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea every single week, as we say, should be able to dominate. Shaq Barrett coming off the edge, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. The Panthers offensive line has been like a get right spot basically for opposing teams. The matchup between Bryce Young in the passing offense and Todd Bowles, I think, is an interesting one because the Bucs defense seems to fluctuate between good and blitz heavy, and they really challenge opposing quarterbacks, and then just giving up so many free big plays. The secondary is not grading very well. They've got second-year Zion McCollum back there struggling because of injuries. This could actually be a spot where the Panthers, if they could scheme it up a little bit better, that they'll have some plays to be made in the secondary. But Bryce Young in that offensive line going up against Todd Bowles and his blitzes, that probably doesn't bode well. So 5.5 for the Bucs. Where are you going with this one?
I'm going for the Bucs. I'm not buying that Carolina fix things.
All right, I'll do the same. I'm going to do the same. I usually go with the interim coach bump. I usually go that route, but I'm not in this one. Super Bowl rematch, Sam. Arizona Cardinals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2008 Super Bowl, whatever year that was, or whatever Super Bowl that was. Steelers favored by 5.5. The new look, 16 points a game, 400-plus yards per game. Steelers
what a crazy
favored by
game
5.5.
What a crazy Super Bowl that was.
Let's just talk about the Super Bowl.
Just that game? Santonio Holmes, the interception by
James Harrison, 100-yard interception before the half.
We've got the culmination of one of the greatest runs ever in the postseason of Larry Fitzgerald.
Fitz just catches the ball over the middle and just splits the D. Mm-hmm. Took it to the house, right?
Yeah.
For like 70 yards or whatever it was.
And that was at the end, like every game that year in this playoffs, Fitz had like $150.
Fitz was
crushing it.
Incredible that year. It was an interesting year, too, because that was the year Brady was out for the season. The Colts lost early with Peyton, and it was just, there's different teams.
Yeah.
Right? The NFC was completely wide open. The Cardinals were a pretty good team. It was a fun year because you just had different teams there.
Mm-hmm. Anywho.
Where were you? Where were you watching?
Where was I?
Yeah. It's a more interesting game than this week's. Fine.
At home, I think. I don't know. Like in Ireland.
Nice.
I don't remember where it was specifically for that game, but I assume somewhere at home.
I was at my friend's house, my friend Kevin's house. Just to go there for the Super Bowl. We moved on from going to Uncle Anthony's house. I went to Uncle Anthony's house, let's see, Niners, Bengals, 88 through 93.
Uh-huh.
So I used to always watch the Super Bowl over there.
What happened?
Then 94, I went to a friend's house. 95, I went back to Uncle Anthony's house. He was real upset with Neil O'Donnell. He thought Neil O'Donnell was on the take. Remember, he kept throwing picks to Larry Brown.
Did he have any insight into that?
I'm just saying he thought Neil was on the take. He probably didn't. I'm not gonna forget it. He did not like that game, and that may have been the last Super Bowl. That was probably the last one. Then I was off, with my friends and mixing it up. That was my last time, I think, over at his house. People wanted to know that. All right, this week's Cardinals-Steelers game. Steelers by 5.5 here. What are you looking for in this one?
Obviously, last week we saw the Matt Canada-less Steelers have a big bump, 400 yards. Kenny Pickett looked really good. Now, they still didn't get the ball in the end zone that much, but part of that was sort of freak plays. Like, Pickett put the ball in his receiver's hands in the end zone. It just didn't end up getting called a touchdown because it came out late in the play. But the Cardinals have a bad defense. Like, this is a team where you would expect the run to continue. So if it doesn't, we're going to have some problems. But this could legitimately have been the start of a Steelers run towards the kind of success some people, including myself, were predicting preseason, right? Like, if they have fixed the offense, if Matt Canada was the problem and they're now going to regularly put up 4 bills and Kenny Pickett's going to grade in the 90s, like, this is a serious team. And the Cardinals, it's just like, can they hang with that? Can Kyler Murray do anything on the other side to offset what the kind of success we expect Pittsburgh to have?
Yeah, it's first off, Pittsburgh has this game where they're favored by 5.5. They've got New England coming to town on a short week next Thursday night. Like, they've got a legit chance here to be 9-4 in a couple weeks here in Pittsburgh. Kyler Murray, since coming back, 63 grade overall. I thought he looked rusty early on, which was, we kind of chalked that up to, okay, missed a few throws, but he hasn't really grown off that the last couple of weeks. Hasn't been running as effectively as he did in that first week either. It really is an important test down the stretch here, because Arizona is going to have to choose between keeping Kyler Murray and picking another elite player, a blue chip player like a Marvin Harrison Jr. to add to the mix, or finding a way out of Kyler Murray's contract or trading him in exchange for a Drake May or a Caleb Williams. So this is, we're still in the middle of that test for Kyler Murray. I think there's any given week he could play well, get the ball down the field, get Marquise Brown involved. But he hasn't played all that well the last few weeks. He's actually gotten worse.
Yeah, I mean, if the season ended today, Arizona would have the number 2 and the number 17 overall pick in the first round. So they are on pace to have a direct conversation about Kyler Murray or the one of Drake May or Caleb Williams who doesn't go number 1 overall, or trade down.
And that's with Kyler Murray having pretty high trade value, because again.
Yeah, there will be interested teams.
Yeah, because Arizona could say, well, we'd rather have one of these potential elite, these top draft pick quarterbacks on their rookie contract, but there's 10 to 15 teams around the NFL who would probably want to have Kyler Murray on their team as well, including after he's already signed. He's already got his signing bonus covered by Arizona, right? That was the move that Detroit made. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of ourselves. We'll get into the offseason soon. But in this particular game, Steelers' running game last week was really good. Najee Harris had a nice game, and Arizona's run defense just got thrashed by the Rams. They've got the lowest run defense grade in the league. I think Pittsburgh has another chance to put up a ton of yards. But again, I think once, like the Saints, red zone finishing, Kenny Pickett finding ways to throw touchdowns, they're going to have to do that this week.
Yeah. Broderick Jones has made a difference to that Steelers offensive line, and not necessarily because he's playing amazingly every play, but because at the moment he's quite high variance. And I think when you have a potential, there's value to being able to crush a guy on a block, because if that's the play that the running back is headed in that direction, that can be a big play, right? And the ones where you miss and the guy gets stuffed in the backfield for a 2-yard loss doesn't necessarily make a big difference to the offense on that drive, because the next drive, 2nd and 12, you're going to be passing. If you hit that pass, it didn't matter, right? Whereas the 40-yard gain, because Jaylen Warren is explosive and fast, that can make a big difference. So the inconsistency with Broderick Jones' blocking right now doesn't necessarily make a huge difference negatively if the rest of the offense can overcome it. But the positive blocks that he makes can make a big difference.
His good blocks have been outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, he is explosive. A lot of his good blocks have been getting to the second level rapidly and wrecking linebackers. He's had some whiffs in there as well, and whiffs on big plays, right? I keep reminding people of the Thursday night game against Tennessee where Jones got knocked 5 yards into the backfield and Jaylen Warren juked him for a 24-yard touchdown or whatever it was. But overall, Broderick Jones has been pretty good at right tackle. With his good blocks have been really impressive and effective. Kenny Pickett coming off one of his better games. Can he, was this like a legitimate change, or is it really just a bad Bengals defense? They have had a rough stretch of play, but I think the Steelers will have success again this week because they're playing a not so good Cardinals team. So, where are you going?
Yeah, it's the perfect defense for Pittsburgh to sort of suggest that the thing is real, right? That Canada Canada was the source of all the problems, and getting rid of him has freed them to become this great offense. Even if that's not true, it might look true for another week because the Cardinals defense is bad, and where they're strong is not enough to combat the Steelers, theoretically. So I'm buying into the bump I think the Steelers will look for legit for at least another week, even if it doesn't continue.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Steelers, I'll take them to cover the 5.5 here. All right, Atlanta Falcons at the New York Jets. The Falcons are favored by 2.5 in New York. The Jets have Tim Boyle starting at quarterback. But the big news for the Jets this week, Aaron Rodgers. Practice window is open, and he was throwing football passes yesterday.
Yeah.
In slow motion.
That's fascinating. So that gives them 21 days, right? That's the window?
Yeah.
So that takes them starting.
He's not taking. There's no contact right now. He's doing functional football drills, and they're going to continue to build up from that.
So theoretically, he could be back for week 15 against Miami?
Yeah.
That's 3 weeks.
I mean, the Jets are currently 15th seed
Right.
in the AFC
Like he'll
out
be
of 16.
I don't think that they can keep the season alive to the point where Rodgers is relevant. So if they're now factoring in this concept of him coming back for a completely pointless final few weeks.
But does Aaron Rodgers have billionaire-level spite? He might have billionaire-level spite against, everyone.
Yeah, well,
where he would want to just come back and say, look, I did it. I came back in 3 months.
No, I think so that's the thing. Like, I could definitely see there being value, vaguely silly value, but value nonetheless to being like just getting back for the final game, right? Just to sort of, their final game is on the road against New England, right? Week 18. Even if their season's dead, like I could see Rodgers wanting to get back, start that final game and be like, I did it. I made the comeback. 40-year-old Achilles. I'm back. Look, aren't I amazing, right? All the thing. Everyone's focusing on Aaron Rodgers in the day where everyone else should be focusing on playoffs. But no, it's all about me. Congratulations to me. I don't really see the point in doing that in week 15. Like, okay, sure, you'll have that day, but like now you got to do it 3 more times before the season's done and risk getting hurt again.
He could also call it a win and just say, well, I was ready to go.
And then just sit down, like play in week 15
I was ready to go,
Miami.
but we're 5-10. Why would I do that?
No, because he
or
definitely
5-9.
He'll want to play, right? But like, would you play him in week 15 and then just sit him down for the rest of the year? You're like, I did come back, but now there's no point in playing the final 3 games.
Depends on what I think this calls for a darkness retreat.
Yeah,
maybe to
it's just
decide what he
a
wants
very
to do.
weird thing now. But anyway, now it's Tim Boyle game again.
Yeah, going up against a feisty Falcons defense. The Jets defense is they've got the number 1 coverage grade in the NFL, and they've been outstanding at the second level or the at the linebacker level. Quincy Williams playing great ball. Corners are tough to throw on, but I do think the Falcons have run game answers. Even though they had the invisible right tackle play last week, overall they're very good at creating in the run game. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Desmond Ridder being a threat as well. I think the Falcons have a chance to move the ball on the ground. I'm just concerned every time Desmond Ridder drops back against that Jets pass rush and great coverage unit.
Yeah. I think one big thing is just, does the offense cause enough problems that, like, I feel like every game for the Jets now is they have an incredibly short fuse for the defense, like unraveling and getting frustrated and pissed off that everything's going south, right? Like
that has been the last couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
Against the Bills and the Dolphins.
And if things go well at the start of the game, I think we're fine, right? I think the Jets can have one of those games where that defense is so good. But it doesn't always look great because the offense is going to dig them a hole and they'll get beaten in a few plays and then they'll get annoyed and frustrated and it'll unravel, right? But I think if the game starts off in their favor and things don't unravel, their defense could absolutely suffocate this Falcons offense. But if things get away from them, or if Tim Boyle throws a pick 6, or if they fumble the ball away or something, and then the Falcons get a big play randomly, or even just get a drive going, I think we're right. Like, we are just a match strike away from the defense exploding and getting annoyed, and like the Falcons easing away and winning because they're at that kind of, it's a tinderbox, right? They're just so annoyed and frustrated with how this season is going that I think we're right on the brink immediately in every game.
Couldn't you see something similar to what happened on the Black Friday game where the Falcons put together maybe 1.5 drives, they're up 10-0. Desmond Ridder, one of the league leaders in turnover-worthy plays, puts the ball in harm's way. Jets get the ball back, short field, and it's like this close game. But the Falcons pull it out, 16-6 or 16-9 or something like that. I mean, that's what I'm looking at here. Unless, again, Tim Boyle didn't play horribly the other day. He had a Hail Mary pick six, right? He had some bad luck in there as well, but it hasn't mattered how well the quarterback plays because the offensive line has just revolving door of not good players right now. And again, beyond Garrett Wilson, who are the guys to throw to?
Yeah.
So the situation hasn't been great. The quarterback play hasn't been great unless the Jets, find a spark in Tim Boyle. I'm expecting a low-scoring game here, though.
Yeah, I do feel like the Jets' defense matches up well against the Falcons' offense as well. Like even Atlanta's strengths, I don't think are necessarily strengths against the Jets. The physicality of a Sauce Gardner, say, is a good matchup against a guy like Drake London. I think they have a good enough run defense to combat Bijan Robinson, the Falcons' run game, even with Desmond Ridder as part of it. I think that they have the capacity to absolutely shut down that Falcons offense. But the question is, will they get frustrated and lose the rag because their own offense stinks?
Keep an eye on Jesse Bates, man. I don't know if he can force those turnovers every single week, but Tim Boyle could give him a couple opportunities here. Okay, so Falcons by 2.5 here in New York. Where are you leaning with this one?
Yeah, I think Atlanta. I feel like the Jets defense is going to get frustrated and unravel again every week now.
I'll take the Falcons to cover the 2.5. I think they'll have some success on the ground. Just a matter of Desmond Ridder not putting the ball in harm's way 3 or 4 times like almost every other quarterback has against the Jets.
Yeah.
Which is a strong bet, but I feel like the Falcons can at least
the Jets turning
not rely on him as much,
The Jets turning every opposing quarterback into Zach Wilson's level. What happens if the quarterback already started at Zach Wilson's level?
Right. He becomes Tim Boyle's level. I don't know. All right, let's go to the 4 o'clock games. 3 more games to discuss here. Denver Broncos at the Houston Texans. By the way, this game we haven't updated the schedule here. This game's now at 1. And I forgot the Panthers Bucks. They flipped these 2 games. So Panthers Bucks is actually in the 4 o'clock window. I think the NFL did that just to get more eyeballs on Niners Eagles.
Yeah.
And to get more eyeballs maybe on Broncos Texans in the 1 o'clock hour because both teams are 6-5. And right on the outside, the 8 and 9 seeds right now in the AFC. So playoff implications here with the Texans favored by 3.5. The Broncos are on a ridiculous stretch where something like 20% of their defensive possessions over the last few weeks have been turnovers. So on one hand, impressive turnaround by the Broncos, and it's coincided with much better defensive play, slew of turnovers, high volume rushing attack, and Russell Wilson making 1 or 2 special rust plays per game, and that's been the formula for the Broncos. But that also feels like a fragile formula. So can they keep that up here against Houston?
Yeah, that's entirely. I mean, that's the question.
Get some Broncos fans just getting to the chat here, excited, feeling good about this little run they're on.
Yeah, I mean they're on a, they're going to get talked about as like the hottest team in the NFL because they have the longest win streak, right?
Yep.
I think that might be overstating it a little bit, but yeah, you have to respect the improvement. I mean, forget the win streak, just the sheer improvement, particularly of the defense, which has gone from, remember, they got beat by 70, and 70 was soft. Remember, Miami
They only
passed
got
up.
beaten by 50, Sam. They gave up 70.
They gave up 70. They got beaten. I mean, they got beaten by a score of 70 points on defense was my point. Like,
Gotcha.
They gave up 70 points. And 70 was a soft number because Miami elected not to take a field goal that would have set the record for some reason that made no sense to anybody. And yet now, like, they limit Kansas City to 9 points. They limit Buffalo to 22 points. They limit Cleveland, albeit without their quarterback, to 12. Like, they are playing really well as a defense, and Russell Wilson is playing really well. Put the ball in Cortland Sutton's hands in the end zone last week, and he didn't come up with the catch. It's a good team right now.
It is. And again, I think, they've it's been, guys like Samaje P. Ryan stepping up and getting big plays by Cortland Sutton, even though he didn't bring that in. I'm intrigued by what Denver's done because, again, I don't think Russ is completely back or anything like that, but they've at least got this more controlled environment, a high volume rushing attack, as I've mentioned, and just in getting just enough plays from him. And Wilson's shown that he's got his athleticism back. He's able to make some of those special plays per game. And the defense that not only they didn't just give up 70, Sam. I mean, they were historically bad through 5 games.
Yeah.
And they gave up 32 straight completions in the first half across 2 different games where every quarterback was looking out of this world good against them. They've completely rectified that.
I mean, they were so bad in that first month that even like after the last month plus of improvement, they've only just crawled off the bottom of the table. Like in league-wide over the season, they are now the 29th ranked defense in the NFL in terms of EPA per play. But like in the last month, they are like massively towards the top. What exactly is that over the last 4 games? And
now you've got C.J. Stroud in the Texans.
Yeah, they're top 7 in the last month, and it's only like they were so bad that they've only just managed to haul themselves off the bottom of the table for a bunch of numbers.
And then on the other side, you have C.J. Stroud, and I know the Texans lost a tough one to the Jags last week, but Stroud continues to get better. I highlighted on Monday. It felt like he had to play outside the pocket a ton on Sunday. Some of it was forced, some of it wasn't, but he still did it effectively. It's almost like he's I don't want him to play like that, but he's adding these extra elements to his game. His last 3 game grades, we have a 91, 82, 80.9, 85. He's been excellent over these last few weeks, basically since Bryce Young outplayed him, which, by the way, that happened this season. In this season, Bryce Young, who everybody's ready to give up on, Bryce Young outplayed C.J. Stroud just 5 weeks ago. That's all, 5 weeks ago that happened, but since that point, Stroud's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And, his Tank Dell just showed up on the injury report yesterday, but the connection between Stroud, he's found a great connection with Tank Dell that you highlighted on Monday, with Nico Collins, with Dalton Schultz. Everything's really coming together for the Texans, other than, a heartbreaker last week against the Jags.
Yeah, he's played fantastically, and he's been good at the stuff that was a question mark for him coming into the season. And, you're bringing up, is he living too much out of structure? I mean, he's playing so well out of structure right now that I, to an extent, don't care. But this is a fascinating game for that because Titus Howard's down, right? ACL, gone for the year for the Houston Texans. So they just lost a player on the offensive line that was pretty important for them. Denver's pass rush has been pretty good recently. Baron Browning being back, Nick Bonito doing well. They've got a stable of guys now that are generating a pretty consistent level of pass rush. Like, can they exploit that offensive line for Houston that's been very good this year, whether it's scheme, whether it's Stroud, whether it's the group playing better than they expect them to, combination of all those things. Can they put him under pressure and force him to make some mistakes? If they can't, I mean, that Houston offense is really good.
Yeah, that was what last week against the Jags. They didn't get a high volume of quick pressure, but they had some pressure at the right times down the stretch.
Particularly late,
Yeah, late in the game, in must-pass situations where the Jags pass rush just won. And again, that's why it was difficult for Houston to make that comeback. And Stroud took a couple sacks late in the game. I think Houston's, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, they're getting closer to being a complete team, running the ball more effectively. Derek Stingley stepping up in year 2 at corner. D'Amico Ryan's calling the action. Will Anderson, the rookie. Like, they have a lot of guys kind of coming together, playing solid, and playing probably well enough defensively, adding the run game to a team that has been just Stroud in the passing attack, right? I mean, like, when you're making that MVP case, it's like, what was Houston supposed to be? And what has Stroud been able to make them, essentially? That's why he has a case, because they've been reliant on the pass game. But they've rounded into form a little bit better over the last few weeks. I still don't completely trust the defense in Houston. But how many defenses do you even trust anyway in a given season? So they're not much different than any other team.
They've been the defense has been inconsistent, but it's had games where it's really showed up and limited the opposition.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that part of it's encouraging, right? And D'Amico Ryan's calls a good game. They've got some good players. Blake Cashman, we just highlighted as one of the most improved players. So there's a lot to like there.
Yeah, it's a big variable in this game. Like if Houston's defense shows up, I think they're big favorites for this game. If they don't, it's much more of a 50-50.
So it comes down to me, Denver's done this incredible job forcing turnovers. We always say, like, these things that are supposed to regress, when are they going to regress? Mm-hmm. Who the heck knows?
Who knows?
But 3.5 points for Houston kind of feels like a lot.
Yeah.
For a Denver team that's won 5 straight. What do you think?
But I do think that if their defense does show up, I think they're worth that 3.5 points. It's just that that's not a guarantee. So I'm going to buy that they do and therefore cover it.
Bobby Slowick, 1 loss since having breakfast with him. I think he'll bounce back here. Take the Texans.
You should tweet out that picture for, like, what they call it, clout. Here's Sam and Steve with offensive coordinator PFF Bobby.
With Bobby?
Yeah.
Now this was I had that one with me and Chase Young from the.
Yeah.
He sat next to me at the College Football Awards a couple years ago.
You should tweet that out more regularly, so that just to reinforce the fact that Sam isn't short, Steve is a giant.
Yeah, me and the 6'6", 260-pound fan that I was with,
being made to look like a small child.
All right, the last game remember that is in the 1 o'clock window. I'm taking Houston to cover the 3.5.
Same.
Last game in the 4 o'clock window is the Cleveland Browns at the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are favored by 3.5 here. Rams are just on the outside looking in as far as the playoff picture. The number 9 seed, tied with tied with the Packers and the Saints at 5 and 6, and the Browns right now clinging to a playoff spot with the 6 seed at 7 and 4.
With Joe Flacco coming in at quarterback.
Is he going to start?
He's taking the first team reps. DTR obviously got blasted out of the game last week, concussed. Flacco's taking the first team reps, and that's what it looks like.
If you get early career Joe Flacco, 2008 to 10, maybe 11.
Seems unlikely given that he's now like 127 years old.
Just from like they didn't drop back a ton. They treated him, it was kind of like early career Ben Roethlisberger and Russell Wilson. It's like, all right, you're going to drop back 25, 30 times a game. Just don't lose it for us. Hit a couple deep outs here and there. Can Flacco get back to that? There was points later in his career where they moved him. He was more of like a high volume passer. And that did not go so well for Joe Flacco. So can he be the game manager-y type that just lets the defense do what they've been doing this year in Cleveland? I think he might be able to do that better than what they have on the roster. So probably the right move here for the Browns, even if there weren't injuries.
Maybe. I mean, late era Joe Flacco, though, always struck me as this guy that he was one of these sort of players where they kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo, where it's like they're always termed these game managers, but they don't actually play like it. Like all you do is reduce the frequency in which the turnover-worthy play happens because he's attempting fewer passes. But it's not actually the percentage isn't any different, right? Like he's still going to throw the ball to the defense 1 out of every 10 passes. It's just that you're now only passing 20 times.
1 out of 10?
Whatever it is, 1 out of 15, whatever. Pick your number. The point being that number's not changing. All you're doing is reducing the overall number of attempts he's making. So I kind of feel like scaling back Joe Flacco's role in this game doesn't fundamentally change what Joe Flacco is. It just potentially changes the frequency with which he's going to cost you the game.
And I'm asking for the low volume Flacco, because the last time we saw him, he was the starting quarterback for the Jets. Week 1 against Baltimore, last year, he dropped back 62 times, and then against the Browns 47 times, and they made that crazy comeback. So he had a hand in making a comeback against the Browns. And then he dropped back 56 times against Cincinnati in Week 3 with a 27 grade.
Yeah, he was averaging like 300 yards a game, and yet there were 6 turnover-worthy plays in that final game against the Bengals.
Yeah,
and they were like, "Yeah, it's enough of that, Joe. Sit down."
Yeah, so I don't think you want that, and he has not been Last time he was really a full-time starter was 2019, but I mean they're asking him to just kind of hold the fort here and trust that their defense has been so good against the pass. Number 1 EPA per play against as far as defenses go. Myles Garrett's got the shoulder injury. We thought it was going to be much worse. He might actually play in this game. So, yeah, that's what they're expecting from Flacco here.
Yeah, I kind of wonder with the Myles Garrett thing. He strikes me as a little bit like Trey Hendrickson, where, he played since he got that knee injury, but he hasn't been Trey Hendrickson since that knee injury. He's had a couple of sacks or a couple of splash plays here or there, but he's gone from being – Trey Hendrickson was putting up the kind of season that was right on the borderline of like all pro level. And he's not been that guy since he got hurt. Myles Garrett was putting together the kind of season that was Defensive Player of the Year, highest PFF pass rushing grade we've ever seen, still leads the NFL in terms of pass rush win rate, is third in pressure rate. He might play, but are we actually getting Myles Garrett, or are we just getting a guy that's, playing with his arm in a sling essentially and trying to get that done? That's a huge variable, I think. Like, just playing is like a tick in the box exercise for me. It's like, are we actually getting Myles Garrett, or are we just getting this guy that's trying to play and keep his sort of game alive?
He's also good enough, though, to draw double teams, and I think they're deep enough on the defensive line. They have the the Browns, number 3 pass rush grade in the NFL. They're deep enough that they can get help that they couldn't get in previous years. Maybe just getting some extra attention is worth it.
I just don't know how long that would last if it becomes clear that he's not really Myles Garrett. I mean, last week he played quite a lot with the injury and had no impact, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, that was Max Crosby last week. Max Crosby's only play was a cleanup sack, basically.
Right.
But he was still drawing double. Like, the Chiefs still gave him a lot of attention just because he was on the field.
So my question would be for Garrett. Like, if he plays and it's pretty clear quite quickly that he's not real Myles Garrett, he's just a guy wearing his number and looking the same, how quickly does that attention dissipate? Or it's in the game plan, so he's going to keep a double team all the way through the game, and even if he does nothing, if he ends up with 0 pressures on 25 pass rushing snaps, he still had the impact of drawing the extra help and the different alignments of the running backs and the tight ends and stuff. And his benefit will be felt by the other players on that defensive line.
On the other side, the Rams are coming off of a dominant run game performance. Kyron Williams, outstanding last week. He's had a really nice season. And the Rams' run game has been sneaky good this year against a Browns defense where if you're going to have success, it's probably going to be on the ground. So can the Rams, play that game? They're number 4 in EPA per play from a run game perspective. The Rams this year, they haven't been really they weren't a good running team when they went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. The Rams are kind of weird. Trying to analyze their season and everything. I think we highlight their pass protection quite a bit. This is one of those games where it could get wrecked depending on Myles Garrett, but they've got the run game to probably combat that this week.
They haven't had a great running game since Todd Gurley called you a clown.
That's not true.
Isn't it?
Because C.J. Anderson, that very season, came off the couch and had an effective second half of the season, last third of the season on the way to the Super Bowl.
Okay, so they haven't had a good running game since the season that Todd Gurley called you a clown.
And I would actually flip that, and I would say, since I said Todd Gurley is not an MVP candidate on NFL Network, and he subsequently took it to InstaFace or whatever he did and called me a clown, they haven't had a great run game since then. And Todd Gurley hasn't played good football since I said he wasn't an MVP candidate and he called me a clown either.
That's true.
If you want to look at it through that lens.
Yeah.
It's too bad those things don't live. That was kind of funny. I had Chris email me that Todd Gurley had called me a clown.
Email you?
On social media. It was like Chris's assistant saw it, sent it to Chris. He emailed it to me and said, ha, 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 join the club, basically. Like, you're a clown like me.
Yeah.
That's what Chris said. Welcome to the clown face.
Yeah.
Because Chris was he was at the Eagles parade, Chris.
Yeah.
His face as a clown
right.
was at the Eagles parade. Because Chris hates every team, including the Eagles, who won the Super Bowl that year.
Well, because he was on the broadcast, right? And
he was on the broadcast, and he probably said, like, this isn't a touchdown or something.
Yeah. The Eagles fans hated that broadcast.
Yeah.
They thought he was, like, dead set against him for the entire broadcast.
Yeah. I mean, literally every person that I meet that when we start talking about Chris, he's like, why does he hate my team?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's us as well.
Yeah,
every fan base thinks we hate their team.
We do, equally, though.
This is the the Browns' defense is so good that this is the type of game where the Rams are going to struggle, right?
I think they might be able to run the ball.
Really?
Yeah. I think they're going to run it.
That's
going to be their game.
I kind of feel like the Browns' defense is so good that this is going to be a bad Rams game rather than a good one.
They're good, but look, I think the pass rush is going to take a hit, whether with or without Myles Garrett. Pass rush takes a little bit of a hit. There are plays to be made in this Browns secondary, a few plays per game. Stafford will find those, and they'll run the ball pretty well. And then it's a matter of, you got to trust Joe Flacco on the other side. And as people know, and look at you. You would never bet. What would you just type in?
Cleveland.
You're taking Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco. Ride or die.
Off
Joe.
the couch 2 weeks ago. He was just you and me on a Sunday afternoon watching YouTube TV.
He's rested. He had a few games last year to keep his eye in, right? And now he's had some rest and recuperation on the couch. And now Joe's ready to go up there and blowtorch the Rams.
You're a Flacco guy late in his career.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the Rams. 3.5 though. That's a lot of points.
Look, I've seen a lot of images on social media that say that Joe Flacco is elite. Therefore, he's going to beat the Rams. Elite quarterback plus
elite
best defense in the NFL equals win.
So you're a big funniest thing possible type of guy.
Uh-huh.
What is this like? Flacco has a good little run, like goes into Kansas City and wins a playoff game. Like what do you like, goes into Baltimore and wins a playoff game?
That would be pretty special.
Is that the funniest thing possible?
That would be pretty funny. I mean, Flacco doing any kind of positive things for the Browns in the playoffs would be pretty funny.
So the Broncos shutting out the Dolphins in the playoffs on the road. Flacco against the Ravens.
What if Flacco gets his second ring on the back of coming off the couch and leading the Browns with this, like has a Trent Dilfer-like run where he's just nothing positive to this team whatsoever, but somehow they keep stumbling into wins after wins, and he gets a second ring. And
the Browns win a Super Bowl.
Right. Well, now his career is validated, right? He gets that Eli Peyton Manning bump of, I got two now, shut the hell up. Nobody can say a damn word. I'm in the Hall of Fame. That's the best thing that could happen.
You telling me we're like 9 or 10 weeks away from a Joe Flacco Hall of Fame case being solidified?
Yes.
All right.
The second ring gets you in. You can't ever say anything.
Tyler's not here today. He's like, he's listening somewhere cheering. Like, I love this. I told you. The problem is you could paint any picture you want. We just painted this whole picture where Joe Flacco's making a Super Bowl run.
And it's particularly funny.
We haven't seen him throw a pass this year.
Yeah, and the funniest way of doing it is the Trent Dilfer way, where like you are not only are you a passenger, but like you're an active drag.
No, you have to have one 96-yard pass to Shannon Sharp per game. You have to have one of those.
But it's not, it's not an Eli run where like you're actually carrying this thing or you're seriously contributing in a positive direction to this. Like you have to be actively dragging this thing down, and yet somehow they win anyway. That's the funniest way.
So I think I need to
like Joe Flacco ends up beating the Ravens in the playoffs, going like 8-4.
He goes into Baltimore, into Kansas City.
Yeah, but like 8 for 27, for like 82 yards and an interception. And somehow they win the game anyway because, Myles Garrett had 2 fumble recoveries and a
broken shoulder.
Yeah.
Great. I might have to take the Browns after this picture that you've painted here, but I'll take the Rams to cover the 3.5. All right, Chiefs at the Packers. It's Sunday Night Football. Chiefs favored by 6 here. They're 8-3, right up there with the Ravens are 9-3. So the Chiefs and Ravens battling both the Jags and the Dolphins, all 8-3, 9-3, battling for that number 1 seed. Packers coming off their great Thanksgiving win against the Lions, sitting at 5-6 here. What are you looking for in this one?
The Packers, really. It's so the Thanksgiving game, I think, represented like the optimal best case scenario of what this team is capable of. Like I don't think it represented a realistic, pathway forward. It's just like if everything goes right, this is what this team could do. And somehow it all happened against the Lions. Like their pass rush was amazing. All of their offensive skill position players did well. Jordan Love, all of his weaknesses became strengths. Like he didn't just, generally speaking this year, he has been an inaccurate quarterback, in particular when it comes to ball location. So even on passes where he's completed them, like the pass location itself has been bad. Like he's been 2 yards off where it's supposed to be. And that's like made life more difficult for receivers. It's stopped yards after the catch. It's, created some incompletions where they weren't there. But like the general ball location has been bad. Against the Lions, it was not just good, it was insane. Like 30-something% of his passes were charted as, accurate plus, like perfect ball location. Not just really good, but dead on. I don't know why, but does that happen again in any way, shape, or form? And does going up against Spags, a really good defense, change that dynamic?
One of the toughest things to do with young quarterbacks is to try to figure out when small sample size trends are going to become the norm, or if they ever will. So if you were listening to us a couple weeks ago, and we would say, look, Sam Howell's trending in the right direction. He's when he's a first-year starter, you assume a first-year starter is going to start slow, hit a tipping point, and just start getting better. Did Sam Howell do that? No, he kind of got worse over the last couple weeks. Well, Jordan Love is kind of at that point. So whichever way you want to split up the data, since week 9, the last few weeks here, Jordan Love is QB6 in the NFL. Since week 8, he's QB10. He's graded higher than Patrick Mahomes over the last few weeks. Like these small, you could split sample sizes any way you want and kind of tell stories any way you want. But a legitimate question with Jordan Love, it does look different the last few weeks. It's not just the results are different. It looks different, right? As you mentioned, the accuracy's better. He also had those plays in the Lions game where the feel and some of the natural playmaking that I think people wanted him to have coming out of Utah State, you started to see some of that, Jordan Love, right? So did we just see a career game against Detroit and a nice little stretch of play? Or is this what Jordan Love is? It's going to be a challenge against a really good Chiefs defense here. But yeah, he's been playing great these last few weeks. Big-time throws, low turnover-worthy plays. Outstanding run here for Jordan Love. Let's see if he can keep it going.
Yeah, it's a really difficult evaluation for him because everything has to happen on a vastly truncated timetable just because of the nature of, Rodgers was there for years. They've given him this weird contract where they're kind of going to need to decide quickly. So whereas normally you would want to be patient and watch this play out over a couple of years, for Jordan Love, it's like this whole thing needs to happen in the course of one season, right? And the start wasn't great. It was okay. But it sort of looked like Jordan Love from college. And now it's like any 2 or 3 week improvement or change. You're like, this could be it. This could be the development path. And now he's on the right track. And now he's the guy. Quick, give him the $40 million a year contract because we've nailed it. And yet we know like how ridiculous that is as a concept. Like 2 or 3 game swings happen all the time and go in both directions, and it might mean nothing. But you can't argue with all the things you said before, which is the trend is in the right direction, and it has been a significant jump for him. And it's making a difference to all those other receivers. Like if Christian Watson's post-Thanksgiving thing is real as well, like he's just turned it on, and now we're going to get the last year's run for Christian Watson, the whole Packers offense is different because now they have a number 1 wide receiver, Dobbs, the Dontavian Wicks, like all those other guys that they've got in the offense are better because they don't need to be the number 1 guy anymore. Watson's taken that over. They can be complementary piece. Everyone just got bumped down the depth chart one in practical terms, even if not in reality. And Jordan Love is completing a higher percentage and the accuracy is better and blah, blah, blah. Like the Packers offense is completely different than it was a month ago. On the other hand, maybe none of that's real and they just had an amazing game and had a couple of good games on the bounce. And now they're going to go back to being this like mistake-ridden, bumbling offense that consistently shoots itself in the foot.
Well, it's funny because the story of both receiving cores are kind of similar, right? The Chiefs have all those drops. By the way, the drop totals that PFF has are going to be – they're a lot different than other sources. I think it was maybe Kevin Harlan actually cited, hey, there's 3 different sources depending on who you listen to. Like we chart more things than drops. But, yeah, the receiving core has –
in a nutshell, why are they different?
There's several different ways to have incompletions. So even if the ball hits a receiver's hands and should be caught, sometimes we'll credit the defense. Sometimes it's a pass breakup. Sometimes it's just he hit him so hard it knocked it out. So even if it should be caught and even gets a good grade, we don't call it a quote-unquote drop.
Yeah.
There's multiple ways that a pass can fall incomplete, not just drops.
The liberal use of the term drop particularly by announcers, drives me insane. It's like, oh, he dropped it. It's like, you've just shown a replay that shows he didn't drop it. It hit him in the hands. He had caught it. Yeah. And then a guy like either hit him or blasted the ball directly. That's not dropping it.
They also did a good job. Mahomes threw a low screen to Rashee Rice the other day, and they were like, it kind of hit his hands, but it's a bad throw. Right. And it's like, this could be a drop. They actually did a good job of talking through the same way we would, and we actually called it just an underthrow by Mahomes on that particular play. But the Chiefs offense, they did a good job last week. It was a lot of underneath stuff. It's check downs and screens, and they kind of opened up the downfield passing attack a little bit more, but they've been still very yak heavy and reliant. They're reliant, but Rashee Rice was the guy that stepped up last week because he's been great after the catch. He takes a shallow cross, 30-plus yards for a touchdown. I think we're going to see him featured more and more. So, yeah, I'm curious to see if the Chiefs' offense has kind of turned a corner here and you've got a little bit more confidence in some of those guys.
Yeah, and just Rashee Rice, another week. Like, he now has – last week in playing time terms, he became their number one wide receiver. He's been, in practical terms, their number one wide receiver for a while, if not all season. But they finally kind of gave him the playing time, the distribution in terms of who's on the field at any given moment to match that. Does that continue? Like, do we see them actually embrace – I know he's a rookie. I know he's a second-round rookie, but Rashee Rice is our best wide receiver. Let's lean into that.
The other highlight, the other matchups to watch here, Rashawn Gary. Again, if it said coming out of Thanksgiving, if the Packers play like they did that day, they could play with anybody because they were good rushing the passer. They were forcing turnovers. They were outstanding on offense, as we mentioned. So Gary has been awesome rushing the passer this year. If he keeps that up against both tackles, with the Chiefs, I think they have an opportunity there. But again, with Mahomes, there's pressure, and then there's the ability to kind of create those negative plays. Mahomes is so good at avoiding sacks, not turning the ball over. So we'll see if that has an impact. And then the Packers' run defense, there's some games they look good, some games they look terrible. If this is one where they can at least slow down Isaiah Pacheco, who they've been hit or miss on that side of the ball, put more pressure on Mahomes, make him feel the pressure of needing to just win the game through the air and kind of try to force some mistakes. I think the Packers, they have the ability to do that. It's just I don't know how reliable their run defense can be week to week.
Yeah. Their defense has been trending in the right direction as well, in addition to the offense. So that's a sort of quiet element of that team moving in the right direction and going on this little run. Does that continue against Kansas City, whose offense itself has not been, what we expect the Chiefs' offense to be? Or is this just too good a team and the Packers get exposed again?
It's one more important storyline here.
Oh, yeah?
Green Bay Packers safety Anthony Johnson with Chris on the call here.
Oh, wow. What if he just spends the entire game talking about Anthony Johnson?
Anthony Johnson Jr. He's got a 54 grade this year, but he's made some plays, missed a bunch of tackles.
Big hit last game?
Yeah, had a big hit, which I thought they were going to call. Was that last week?
Whatever. Thanksgiving,
anyway, I thought they were going to call that a penalty. Was that 2 weeks ago? He had a hit that I thought they would call. Anyway, Chris loved Anthony Johnson around draft time, and I've been waiting for this day where Chris gets to be on the call. Assuming Chris is working this week. He took last week off.
I would assume he is, right?
Yeah. He's not going to take 2 weeks off,
Look,
but it's Green Bay. That's what Al used to always be like, I'm skipping out of Green Bay.
Yeah. Look, how long can the fish last?
You think he's been eating fish all week?
He had like 12 pounds of fish. He's got to have been eating it for a while.
You could stagger it. You could freeze it, stagger it a little bit.
You think he staked up that thing and put a whole bunch of Ziploc bags in the freezer?
Well, he probably had somebody do it for him, but yeah. But the process probably happened. Anthony Johnson, could make some plays here for the Packers. Anytime it's in Lambeau at night, you got to check the weather. Let's see where we are here. Last time I checked, I think it was going to be like 24.
Ooh, getting chilly.
It's supposed to snow during the day, but not at night, unfortunately. So, I don't know. 37 during the day, 46% chance of precipitation.
34 and light snow.
I've got 24, 25 at night. Mostly cloudy.
Okay, I got 34 and light snow.
That's good. It'll be somewhere in between there. I want a snow game. We need some more snow games.
Love snow games.
It's about that time. Where are you going with this one? Packers, Chiefs favored by 6 here.
Going Kansas City.
Yeah, I'll take Kansas City again. But I'll tell you, I'd love to see a good game where the Packers played the same level they did on Turkey Day.
Yeah, Jordan Love and that offense maintaining this run they're on, even if he doesn't 30+% insane, perfect accuracy throws is an unrealistic target, but if he just stays accurate more than inaccurate, that transforms that team into a vastly different proposition for any opponent.
Someone wants us to recreate the Step Brothers movie poster for Christmas cards.
I don't immediately have.
We could do that. We should send Christmas cards to anybody that's a top 1% listener.
Oh God!
Through Spotify, that'd be a good thing to do.
I see. Yeah,
for our listeners.
I don't have one of those.
Buy some sweaters.
Yeah, sweater vest things.
Expensive.
Expensive.
I mean, if you could buy $800 worth of fish, we could buy some sweaters.
I think he paid for his own fish. I don't think he put that on.
Well, I want him to pay for my sweater too.
Yeah.
All right, Cincinnati Bengals at the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's Monday Night Football. Every time the Bengals play, I'm going to say it would have been epic if Joe Burrow was here. But it's the Jags favored by 8.5. Jake Browning against Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. Man, this is really going to be Monday Night Football, huh?
It's Monday Night Football, yeah. Bengals defense has been sneaky bad since they were.
It's been sneaky bad most of the season. They got right for a couple of games during the time that Joe Burrow was back, and then they went back to being bad again.
But then it was. That's the danger of trends that I was hinting at with the Jordan Love thing. It was like, okay, they're trending back in the right direction, and all the players who had played well historically for this defense are back. But I think the inconsistency at safety is starting to catch up with them.
And
all
Hendrickson,
their second-level defenders.
We already talked about the Hendrickson thing. Him not being Trey Hendrickson since he got injured, since he got the knee injury, has changed that. He's had back-to-back grades of basically 61 as a pass rusher. He has 3 pressures in the last 2 games when he'd been averaging 7 for the previous couple of months.
I think it shows. I think it's similar to the Lions. When you've built a kind of a fragile pass rush, because they haven't gotten a ton out of Myles Murphy, the rookie. It's a bit of a fragile pass rush where it was Trey Hendrickson and friends.
Yeah. Just
like the Lions was Aiden Hutchinson and friends, and you didn't get enough production from everyone else. If you lose that one piece, it's a challenge, man.
Yeah, he still leads the team in total pressures by 23, despite only having 3 in the last 2 games. And now 2 of those have been sacks, so it looks maybe better than it has been, but they've literally gone from by far their primary source of pass rush dominating to that basically disappearing outside of 2 sacks, and nobody else has stepped up yet to pick up that slack.
Yeah, and on the other side, again, the Jags will have a game every few weeks where they kind of lay an egg, but overall they've been good. Defense has been solid. I think they're going to make life difficult for Jake Browning and company. I think every week trying to figure out, Josh Allen's having a really good season rushing the passer. Will they can be fragile at times as well, where it's just Josh Allen. But Trayvon Walker hasn't been good snap for snap. He had a really good rush down the stretch there, where he popped a defensive lineman that led to one of the sacks by Allen. I think he maybe got in there as well. Want to see if the Jags have enough pass rush here, because they should be able to do some damage against this Bengals line. Mm-hmm. What else are you looking for in this one here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the interesting side of the ball is actually the Jags offense against Cincinnati's defense, because the Bengals defense, I think, at least has the capacity to play at that kind of high-end level and limit that team. Jacksonville's offense has been good for most of the year, but has, misfired at times, or just not connected, or they've been, one element is letting down the other at given moments. The other side, it's just not the same when it's Jake Browning. That's what it is. It's kind of like watching hobbled Joe Burrow. It's just, yeah.
He is very much like hobbled Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Cam Robinson injured at left tackle for the Jags. Mm-hmm. So we'll see Walker Little kick back out to left tackle there. Jags haven't had, the line hasn't played great this year. Run blocking is second worst in the NFL. I like what I've seen from Travis Etienne for the most part as far as his ability to create big plays, but it's not a well-rounded offense, and I want to see more consistency from Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley. He's had a nice couple weeks here. Trevor Lawrence has had a beautiful few weeks throwing the ball down the field, creating big plays. Remember last week, flipped the field a ton with 4 or 5 big-time throws. So the potential's there. I want to see more of a complete game from the Jags. I think that's what they're looking for. They're 8-3. They're in great shape, but again, they're trying to figure out, can we compete with the Ravens, which we'll see in a few weeks? Can we compete with the Chiefs? they need more consistency from the line and from their receiving core.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's pick the game.
I think the Jags will win comfortably, but I think 8.5 is too much.
Now, the last time the Jags played on Monday Night Football was 2011, I believe.
2011?
Yes.
Wow.
That's what I saw. 2011. Now, the first time the Jags played on Monday Night Football.
Oh, God.
September 1997. The 2-0 Jags.
Second year. As in existence.
Third year of existence.
Third year in existence.
They lost in the AFC Championship the previous year. Brunell got hurt in the preseason. They had to play without him the first 2 weeks. But week 3, Brunell makes a dramatic comeback for Monday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And there's a great back-and-forth game. Brunell played awesome. Played great in that game. Back-and-forth game. The Steelers line up for a game-winning field goal, but it gets blocked and taken to the house by maybe Chris Hudson of the Jags. And he ran right by Bill Cowher, right along the sideline. And Cowher gave it one of those. He was almost punched him on the way by, which seems to be a Steelers thing. Didn't Tomlin actually do that too? Actually hit somebody on the way by?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cowher wound up like he was going to punch him.
Yeah.
But he didn't, and it was 30-23 or whatever. First time that the Jags hosted Monday Night Football.
Great.
If you're interested in more, I'll post some videos from the first game.
Yeah, I'm not. Not even slightly.
It's going to be bumping.
We got an email in from somebody that was talking about old games that we could watch on YouTube for a watch along for people.
Yeah. Jags game.
Somebody called Pete. No, it wasn't a Jags game. It was Houston against Pittsburgh, and they just started. People have been sending in some hysterical box scores. I sent this to you, but David Carr was 3 for 10 for 33 yards with 4 sacks in there, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but a long and 6 rushing yards. Meanwhile, Tommy Maddox was 30 of 57 for 325 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and somehow the Houston Texans won this game 24-6.
24-6?
Yeah, with a quarterback that threw for 33 yards.
Wow. That's impressive.
Incredible box score. Just absolutely wild.
That was
Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator for the Lions now, right?
Yeah.
Had 2 interceptions, pick sixes, 2 pick sixes, and 2 pass breakups.
They're the same thing. If you're looking at an NFL box score, they're the same place.
That's true. Okay, so 2 pick sixes.
When was that, 02? 02, 03.
02. December the 8th.
So that was the expansion year for the Texans.
Yeah, expansion Texans. And they were 4-9 at this point, going up against a 7-5-1 Pittsburgh team.
Oh, that's fantastic. I hope we could find that game.
Led by XFL MVP Tommy Maddox.
Yeah, he's fresh off the XFL.
Right
there. All right. That's it for us. Enjoy the football this weekend. You'll be back here tomorrow breaking down some Thursday Night Football, and I'll be back on Monday reviewing all the Week 13 action. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. See you again Monday.